Faraz, it's time to save some more fantasy teams. We got another, 100 questions from you, the viewers. Thank you, as always, to sending them in on Upper Hand Fantasy's Instagram or in the Discord link down below. We'll answer, 7 or 8 of them today, including towards the end, all of you long-suffering people who drafted Jamar Chase and Brian Thomas Jr. We give you a whole course of action of what you can do to, again, save your fantasy season.
I think we're at a point now where all the players who haven't been performing in those first couple of weeks, now we're hitting the point where like we're hitting the real panic button, on a lot of players, right? And now, but it's really about, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle these guys? And I think we're going to address a few of those in this episode.
Definitely. Again, these are only video questions because they're so good that we don't even need to get to the text questions on top of it. We'll actually kick things off from Spencer Herbert over on Upper Hand Fantasy.
Hey Faraz, so I'm currently 1-2 right now, and both of my losses are due to manager error. To add insult to injury, CeeDee Lamb is now out, my number 1 pick, so I'm down a lot of production. I was looking to make a trade. The trade that I was offered from one of my league mates is for CeeDee Lamb, actually. So I would be giving up CeeDee for Jacoby Myers, Jalen Warren, and Chris Olave. I'd like a better flex option, preferably wide receivers, which I think that would help with, as well as my running back room. I have Chase Brown, I have Bill, and I have Kenneth Walker. I've completely given up on Chase Brown, and I'm still waiting on, Kenneth and Bill to really have a solid role. So I would be looking to upgrade my running back room as well. But am I giving up too much, and am I getting enough back in return for CeeDee Lamb, which again was my number 1 pick? So
I wanted to open with this one for us because I'm sure many people out there are in a very similar position. You're 1-2, and do you deal a star player and an injured one on top of here for just more overall quality throughout your roster? What do you think?
I do think this is quality, and I have a question for you, Josh. I mean, do we have a potential workhorse in Jalen Warren? Like, I think he significantly upgrades the running back room here for this fantasy team, and this room overall, what he has right now, what Spencer has, gives me a lot of pause. The snap share for Warren jumped like really significantly this past week, right? 58% in week 2 to 80% in week 3. Route participation went up 41% to 65%. And you look at these extra routes, and then you look at the company that he's in with respect to targets per route run. You only have Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey, and Devon Achane with the higher targets per route run. So with some extra routes, like if this usage sticks, like this could be RB1 territory, but also you have to consider Arthur Smith, right? Like this is also Arthur Smith. So big question mark of whether that sticks. Overall, I do think this move can kind of help you get out of the hole at 1-2 because it could get really bad really quickly. And I hate giving up Lamb, but I think you're getting 2 wide receivers who are getting elite target share. Probably will get it done most weeks in PPR. Olave is just a straight up PPR scam. Great call, by the way, last week, Josh, on buying Chris Olave. I do think he has upside. He's 10th among all wide receivers in weighted opportunity right now, which is really interesting because if Spencer Rattler improves just a little bit, it could turn into more than just a PPR scam. I also think Myers is an easy buy, right now too, right? So you have Chase Brown. You really can't depend on him at all right now, man. Like, the Bengals are 7.5-point dogs this week. That can continue to go wrong. Their offensive line is PFF's worst run blocking unit by a mile. And Denver's, defense in terms of, run defense is 10th best according to PFF. So not a great situation. Overall, man, like I hate dealing star players, but in this situation, like I think I'm okay with this deal. I think it's a solid enough haul for me.
Unfortunately, it's going to make the flex conversation every single week very difficult for this. And we don't know the rest of his wide receiver room, but I could see him on a weekly basis deciding between the running backs of Ken Walker, of Bill, of Jalen Warren, and then of your 3rd or 4th wide receiver spot, including Jacoby Myers and Chris Olave. So it kind of creates more headaches, but it gives you more possibilities, Spencer, to maybe potentially pick the right one. I hear what you're saying on Jalen Warren, Faraz, but I think I can make cases on both sides. They're good people on both sides, some might say. First, like with the Jalen Warren stuff, as you said, he is getting more work than he ever has before, and in specific areas than he ever has before. Like the opportunities inside the 10-yard line this year in comparison to previous years, it's astronomical. The other part, though, is he hasn't made good on any of those opportunities inside the 10-yard line as of yet. So it's just almost figments of our imagination at this point. And sure, the Olave and Myers stuff can be good, but to me, it's going to be more solid than what CeeDee Lamb could potentially bring back in, I don't know, 4 weeks. But that's the hang up. This is a high ankle sprain, albeit not extreme, and maybe of the mid high ankle sprain variety. If you just want to read into these words, I would make these moves. I would just also tune into both Faraz's and our content every single Sunday morning to make sure you get your start sits correct based on the matchups.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think, Bill, like, I don't know how much I can trust Bill, man. I do believe that eventually
I like Bill. Faraz, I like Bill moving forward, because this is my thing. They split the backfield 3 different ways last week, and they will probably do that a bit more moving forward. He still saw the most amount of snaps, and it's just an offense that we want cheap pieces of. Like, we got a bunch of questions about Bill this week. To me, that makes him a buy if people are uncertain, because his role to me is only going to grow as we go forward, which naturally makes sense when we have a 7th round rookie in after 3 NFL games, and he looks the best to me on an NFL field.
He definitely looks the best. There's no doubt about it. The question to me is where does that max out in terms of opportunity? That's really my concern here. And when does it happen? I think it can happen soon. I think he's a buy. If you can buy him low right now, I fully agree. But he's not somebody that I want to depend on to say that, okay, I think this guy can be my RB2 in a couple of weeks. I want to make a move now, especially if I'm 1-2 or if I have a losing record. And I would want to make that move because I don't know if I could trust that, being my plan moving forward. I want a more solidified plan.
Final question on Jaylen Warren. With how you open the conversation here and kind of discussing his current role, does that mean you think that Caleb Johnson is just going to be a total 0 for the entire season?
Man, it's not looking good, man. It's not looking good. We're seeing zero signs of him being relevant this season. Like, if there was a glimpse, if there was something like, oh, look at that, he got a carry. Oh, look at that, he's getting a snap on offense. Oh, look at that, he's not fumbling on special teams. If there was a glimpse of that, then I would say yes. But I think for the immediate future, for a team like this who needs wins now, I'm all about it. Now, if you're 3-0, like, he's not the guy that I'm looking to go get. But yes, like right now, like I'm really, really happy to put Jaylen Warren in my lineup as an RB2.
My concern is if Jaylen Warren does not convert again on those short yardage, high value touch situations near the goal line, if they do turn to someone like Caleb Johnson, if he adds any opportunities to his game, then it to me tremendously impacts Jaylen Warren moving forward, even if Warren is always going to have, the receiving and passing down work, which has been highly valuable next to Aaron Rodgers. I'm not telling anyone out there to play Caleb Johnson. He should not be on your radars. It would just shock me if we go an entire 17 weeks without Caleb Johnson, at some point averaging 5 touches a game. But that could happen, in week 12. Next up, this is Matty B.
Hey guys, huge fan. In a 12-team half PPR redraft league, and I'm 2-1 currently. I got offered Drake London for Quentin Johnston and Ramondre Stevenson. My RB depth isn't the best. I got Kenneth Walker and Amari Hampton was my top 2, and then I got Pacheco as well. I'm leaning towards accepting that offer, but I was wondering what you guys think. Thank you.
2 things for us. First one, so often people are on the panic side of selling a top asset that they drafted. Maddie's on the receiving end of this one. But the other part is, last week on the show, you said to sell high on Quentin Johnson. He had another really strong week. So I'm wondering if your perspective has changed on QJ based on this conversation.
A little bit. I'm not going to lie, man, because 3 straight weeks of him just like killing it, right? He's
3's bigger than 2, I guess is what
3
you're saying.
3 is so much bigger than 2. So much bigger. 33%. Like it's one of those things where, in this situation is like, it really comes down to who would you rather have rest of the season, Quentin Johnston or Drake London, right? And to me, Ramondre Stevenson is likely a depreciating asset, right? Like, given the fumbles last week, given the promise of Travion Henderson, you kind of can predict that he is going to take, at least he's showing some signs of him taking up a larger role at some point this year. Could be as early as this week, right? We saw him completely take over the backfield late in the game last week after the fumbles from his entire, but it took the entire backfield to fumble, 3 times before he was able to get that opportunity. We'll see how much of that sticks this week, but I'm willing to give up Ramondre pretty easily as the second piece of this deal if I feel like I'm upgrading at wide receiver. And yes, I do feel like I'm upgrading at wide receiver here, going from Johnston to London. I think Ladd McConkey is going to eventually be the guy in this wide receiver core. He is the best wide receiver here. I think eventually it's going to be Ladd and Keenan as like the clear 1-2. And Quentin Johnson is going to sprinkle in those great games like we just saw in these first 3 weeks. I think this is just a really, really good sample size for Quentin Johnston. Now, this trade doesn't feel great, because the vibes are all the way up on Quentin Johnston and not great on London. But Michael Penix, he couldn't get anything going this past week, right? I think Carolina, not the easiest matchup for quarterbacks, that you would have liked it a little bit better. And then the Falcons dominated the Vikings in week 2. That's also not a great, passing, situation to be in. Their defense is really good against quarterbacks. I think this week can be better. Washington's allowing 290 passing yards each of the last 2 weeks, 5 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks to Jordan Love and Geno Smith. And I think the point is, I think there's a good chance we see London bounce back from 2 disappointing weeks. And by the way, his week 1 would have been a lot better if he just caught that end zone pass, they simply dropped at the end of the game. I think the perspective on him would have been a little bit different if he hauled that in and didn't get hurt on the play. So do I want a talented, true number 1 wide receiver for the Falcons, or do I want the wide receiver who could regress to the wide receiver 3, albeit on a great offense? But I think once Ladd McConkey starts doing his thing, I fully believe will happen. I'm going to make this deal, and I think it's the better long-term move.
I have a lot to say about Ladd McConkey a bit later on. That's in the buy and sell section, so I'll save it for then. Just on Matty's team, he's loaded right now. At running back, it's Amari Hampton, it's Ken Walker. At wide receiver, it's Nico, it's Debo, it's George Pickens, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. His bench has some upside in Luther Burden and Kyle Monangai as well. This is an easy one that I would say yes. And there's one clear change when I look back on how Drake London was performing over the entire 2024 season and in the final few weeks with Michael Penix versus what is happening now to make him the wide receiver 51 at this point. And it's simply because he's not being targeted at the same rate when lining up in the slot. Last year, 73 slot targets, 47 receptions, 563 yards, 4 touchdowns. Basically, anytime he lined up in the slot, he was targeted about 66% of the time. This season, just 5 slot targets on 27 total targets. That's an 18.5% rate versus, when he's lining up outside, that's at about last season when he lined up in the slot, that was again about 46% of his total targets. So if I can see that, you would like to think that Zach Robinson can see that. The other only issue I have is that they're just running 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver sets, about 30% less this year, just because they are trying to get Kyle Pitts way, way, way more incorporated in this offense. But no matter what, this to me is the dip of all dips on Drake London. I don't know if he's ever going to, score as the top 10 wide receiver for the rest of the season as he was drafted as heading into this year. But for where you're at, and you already have a ton of stars on your roster, you could potentially be adding another one here versus guys who totally outperformed the draft slot that you had on them. And that is definitely a risk I'm willing to take.
I'm totally with you. And, he also mentioned that, he doesn't have the best running back room in Amari Hampton and Kenneth Walker. Well, based on the rest of your roster, I would be perfectly fine with this RB1 and RB2 moving forward. I think Kenneth Walker eventually is going to be the guy. We'll see when that happens, but I would be perfectly fine with this. I'm not making a desperate move to get another running back here.
Next up, over on Upper Hand Fantasy's Instagram page, this is from the 3-0, and he'll let us know. 3-0 Carn Dog.
Hey, Upper Hand Fantasy and Underdog NFL. I'm both fans of your guys' accounts, and I really appreciate the content you guys do. So thank you guys for that, first off. But now for the trade question, just to say I'm 3-0 in my league, and it is a 12-man PPR redraft league. So now for the trade. Should I trade away Mike Evans, Ricky Pearsall, Jordan Mason, and Cedric Tillman, and receive Rashee Rice, Jacoby Myers, and Trey Benson? Thank you, guys.
Faraz, this is a great one. Again, another injured asset in Mike Evans that another league mate is willing to take on. What do you think of this one?
Anytime I'm able to buy Rashee Rice, I'm doing it.
Yep.
And you're 3-0.
Yep.
I almost don't even need to see the rest of this deal. I'm sold. But I love these type of trades because these are like blockbuster, like league shaking, like the group chat goes crazy type of deals.
Yes.
I obviously love to see it. But you also getting Trey Benson, like who I fully believe can potentially be an RB1 rest of the season. Depending on what type of role they give him, like he already had control of the 2-minute downs, like passing downs situations coming into last week. We'll see if he holds that, whether they want to give him all of that work or whether, Amari DeMarcado, maybe takes that just to ease his workload a little bit. But to be clear, you are getting a wide receiver 1, potentially a high-end wide receiver 1 in Rice when he's back, based on all these other high-end quote-unquote high-end wide receiver 1s, what they're doing right now, and a potential RB1. And you're giving up Evans, who's going to be out for a few weeks. Probably a wide receiver 2 when he's back. I would love Ricky Pearsall as a player, but I think there are going to be questions around who will actually be the more productive fantasy receiver between him and Juwan Jennings when he's back. I do think Ricky Pearsall is the much more talented wide receiver, but man, like Shanahan just absolutely loves scheming up Juwan Jennings. And Jordan Mason, like he'll be amazing. You're giving up Jordan Mason. He's going to be amazing for the next 3 games, but who knows like what that split looks like when Aaron Jones comes back. Tillman's just a throw-in. So I am 100% doing this deal, and I would be absolutely pumped to do it.
I am doing this deal as well. That's the overarching point, but there are other smaller elements that you and I disagree on. So let's just take it from the top. Okay. The Rashee Rice aspect of this, you're in, Carm, the number 1 position to take advantage of maybe one of your other friends, league mates, whoever, who are scrambling, who are panicking, who are 0-3 or 1-2, and can no longer be patient about Rashee Rice. This is what everyone who's watching this video, if you are 3-0 right now, try to make a deal for Rashee Rice, because when he comes back, it is so obvious and it is so evident that he is going to be the primary pass catcher for the Kansas City Chiefs and will probably make that offense more relevant as it goes along. So that should be your number 1 target out there for basically everyone, but especially if you're 3-0. Now, where I disagree with you, I actually think I would rather have Jordan Mason than Trey Benson the rest of the season. I think Jordan Mason is undervalued at this point. One, he is one of, to me, the best ball carriers in the NFL at large. Now, that's just ball carrier, not receiver, right? But this Vikings team, how it was constructed in the offseason, is very different than the ones that Kevin O'Connell has thrown out there in the past that only want to throw the football. To me, they definitely want to run the football and have that as a more balanced attack. You bring in guards, you make and pay Trey Mason, you bring in Ryan Kelly on top of it at center. And so in week 4, I think Jordan Mason is ranked ahead of Trey Benson. And then moving forward, I'm not that concerned about Aaron Jones coming back and taking control of Jordan Mason. Whereas with Trey Benson, no doubt he's going to be the lead ball carrier for this team, but I do think he gives up some of the role to Amari DeMarcado, as we saw last week. And then I'm actually a bit concerned about the overall rushing attack from the Arizona Cardinals, more so than I'm concerned about the overall rushing attack for the Minnesota Vikings. But I know I'm in the minority on that one for us.
I'm so far ahead on Trey Benson that I would be Jordan Mason the rest of the season, because I do think, like, just like how Amari DeMarcado, it could take some of Trey Benson's role. I think Aaron Jones is going to take a much bigger chunk out of Jordan Mason's role. Now, Jordan Mason, I totally agree with you, man. He's one of the best rushers in the NFL, one of the most efficient last year, yards after contact, missed tackles force. Same thing this season. So I do think no matter what, he is going to be the 1A in that backfield and the primary rusher in goal line situations, on early downs, et cetera. But I do think Aaron Jones is going to play a significant role. Now, my question is the Vikings offense going to be as good, right? That's really my question in terms of Vikings offenses of the past, right? Over the last couple of years, like, will that quarterback situation turn out to be okay this year? Like, whether it's the rookie, whether it's Carson Wentz, whoever it is, under center. But I'm going to take the guy who I think is going to get 70% of the work in Arizona at the very least, I would say. I don't think DeMarcado is going to get, I don't even know if he's going to get 30% of the running back touches in that backfield moving forward. I want to get the guy who's going to be getting that work, week 15, 16, 17. I don't think Jordan Mason is going to be that guy who's going to be getting that type of work, league winning type of work. So yeah, I think that I just want the guy who's going to get, a ton of volume. That's really the name of the game for me. I think people forget what kind of prospect Benson was too. Like, he never got the opportunity because James Conner was so damn good, like one of the most efficient running backs over the last several years. But Benson was like in the 90th percentile in like yards after contact, 99th percentile missed tackles forced. Like he was a really, really good prospect coming out alongside Jonathan Brooks. So I just think he's a talented player too with the opportunity.
Yeah.
So I'm in.
Maybe I have slight bias against Trey Benson as a player because I think he has obvious strengths and obvious weaknesses to his game. And I do actually have concerns about the Cardinals rushing attack at this point. And then my final note here is I actually would rank Ricky Pearsall over Jakobi Meyers rest of season. But again, that is my bias showing I am a Ricky Pearsall guy. I'm getting questions almost every single day of people wondering if they should be selling Ricky Pearsall at this point, and I still don't understand it. So to me, that still makes him a buy low at this point. Like have someone, this is a guy who's third in the NFL in receiving yards right now. Have someone at least stress him in terms of taking him out of the number one job, whether that be a banged up Juwan Jennings or Brandon Ayuk, who John Lynch just said is not going to be returning for quite some time. This is forecasting, and I understand this is fantasy football, but forecasting doom on a player who's actually like really good right now and in a very good offense. So even with me preferring Jordan Mason and Ricky Pearsall over Trey Benson and Jakobi Meyers, I am still making this deal because those are tighter than the Rashee Rice down to Mike Evans, and Rashee Rice the rest of the way for a 3-0 team might make you legitimately win your championship versus just getting to the playoffs.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I do think Ricky Pearsall is clearly the most talented wide receiver. I just hope that, Kyle Shanahan just ends up using him in that way and gives him the elite workload and the elite target share that he's capable of.
After the show is over, I want you to do one thing. Google yourself. Yep. I want you to see that maybe your name, your contact information, your home address, where you've worked, and shoot, maybe even your social security number is available online. That's slightly terrifying, isn't it? Delete Me can help you and have that extra layer of protection. In fact, Wirecutter of the New York Times chose and named Delete Me as their top pick for data removal services. I know I go to Wirecutter for like the best television, the best cell phone, the best speakers, all that type of stuff. So that's a great recommendation here for Delete Me. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/underdog and use promo code underdog at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/underdog and enter code underdog at checkout. Once again, that's joindeleteme.com/underdog, code underdog. Disclaimer, Delete Me works with data brokers. Before we go any further, if you're enjoying this show, be sure to hit that subscribe button and also go and check out Faraz's work. We'll link in the description down below. That is Upper Hand Fantasy over on Instagram. Next, this is Pat.
Hey, Josh and Hayden, huge fan of the show. Just want to start out by saying my brother's been dominating our home league the last couple years, and I took a look on his YouTube history and found out he'd been following you guys, so if he sees me on here, my cover's blown. But I got a question for you this week. I ended up a little light at running back after my draft, but I've got Trey McBride, and I was thinking about going out and trying to get a running back for him. I got offered Breece Hall and Sammy Laporta for Trey McBride. Wanted to see what you guys thought of that. And if you're not into it, who you would target, or if you think it's just better hanging on to Trey. Anyways, appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Does he live in paradise? I mean, I want to switch places with Pat at this instant, right now, please.
Josh, it's funny. I'm wondering to myself, like, would I rather be there or would I rather be 3-0 on my fantasy team? Like, I feel like if I was in paradise like he is right now, and I was like 0-3, I would be in paradise thinking about my fantasy team.
I mean, he's got beautiful flowing hair. It's just like slightly wet. You can literally hear the waves crashing in the background. Why are you tuning in to our fantasy content? We could be literally doing anything else in freaking paradise, if it's Australia or Costa Rica, wherever you are right now. Go and be outside. Well, I guess you can do both. Be outside and watch this freaking show. Thank you for doing it. Okay, back to, the most important thing, which is Breece and Sam Laporta versus Trey McBride. Which side are you taking?
This one's kind of close for me. I think, like, I don't know, like, if I'm okay downgrading from McBride to Laporta and then fixing a potential hole at running back. Like, I don't think I am. McBride is elite, man. He's number one in weighted opportunity among all tight ends through 3 weeks. He actually caught a touchdown, which is, before like week 18, when it actually matters. And I think he's going to provide this, like, the positional advantage that you need, rest of season. It does not seem like Breece Hall will. Like, I'm a big Breece Hall guy. Like, I think he will gain full control of that backfield at some point. I don't know if it's going to be with his coaching staff, but he's capable. If they gave him the work, I just don't know that the coaching staff will put him in that workhorse role that I think he's fully capable of. But that's a moot point if they don't give it to him. But all that to say, I don't trust Laporta to be that much better than a replacement level tight end for fantasy. So I'm declining this trade and looking for another way to get a running back.
100%. I would not be moving Trey McBride. If we were to redraft today, he is easily the tight end 1, which he was selected as the tight end 2 behind Brock Bowers. I think Bowers is going to be fine the rest of the season, but the bionic knee is not great visuals at this point. And as you said, he gives you an edge, McBride does, on a weekly basis. He is the primary pass catcher for his offense. You can't say that about Sam Laporta, who is the number 2 or number 3, with Amon-Ra St. Brown always getting those targets. So the other part of this, though, is Pat's roster is kind of weird. I mean, he is loaded up with a bunch of studs. He has Josh Allen, Devontae Adams, Saquon Barkley, Trey McBride. But then, like, his running back 2 spot is between Zach Charbonnet and Bashal Tutin. And then he has a whole bunch of handcuffs. I think he would like to start Xavier Worthy in his flex spot over Romeo Doubs, but his roster is a bit thin. So I kind of do understand flipping 1 piece for 2 here. My big point to you, Pat, would be at this point in the season, we can't have 3 running back handcuffs. It's week 4. You can't have Ray Davis, B-Rob, and Blake Corum rounding out your bench at this point. We need to get at least one of these wide receivers, or heck, even a second tight end back in when you could have picked it up, like Jawan Johnson or someone like that. I know Breece Hall is probably going to crush it against the Miami Dolphins in week 4. That follows, 19 carries that he had for 100 yards in week 1. Then he had 19 carries or about 50 yards in the last 2 weeks. I'm just overall concerned about this Jets offense. And if he doesn't crush it in week 4 against the Miami Dolphins, then you've already taken like a huge loss in his rest of season value for me.
I totally understand the strategy behind having all those handcuffs on your bench, because you're like, man, if one of these guys get hurt in front of them, I have an RB2 finally, or I have an RB1 even. I get it. I totally understand it. But, obviously you want to try to make some moves, besides that, to try to get that RB2 and not just hope, that one of these running backs gets hurt and then you end up having that RB2. So yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
And Pat, once again, we'll close out this episode with our favorite buys. So definitely tune into that one. Some other targets you could get instead of Sam Laporta and Breece Hall. Next, this is Romy.
I've been offered this trade. I'd be giving Nico Collins for Emeka Egbuka and David Montgomery. I have probably the best wide receiver room in my league, and my running backs are pretty lackluster. So what do you guys think about this trade? It's a 10-man PPR league.
Faraz, this is why I love this show. We go from Pat's background to Romy's LED light strips. What do you think of this deal? It's a very interesting one with Egbuka and Demont and Nico involved.
Dude, why you gotta show on his setup, man?
No, look, we welcome all types of people from every single location in the world. Everyone is equally happy. Our audience is wide and vast across the entire landscape. This is why I love it. I was being honest with that.
Hey, Romy, listen, man. I'm with the setup, man. I'm with you.
Yes,
all right, I like it. It's a little. I mean, I'm sure you don't film any adult films back there. I'm sure it's all kosher and all good. But listen, man. Nico Collins, he's an elite wide receiver. He didn't start out amazing, but he's 10th in weighted opportunity among all receivers. 34% target share over the last 2 weeks. Now, you compare Buka to him, you compare the offensive environment. Also, it's like, man, this Texans offensive environment like gives terrible vibes, right? But the Bucs, a little bit better. Like, not as much motion this year without Liam Cohen. Not as much, not as much movement, which is not ideal. Like, you would hope that they get back to what they were doing last year. But you get a running back 2 back also. And now that we know the Lions offense does not seem to be missing Ben Johnson that much, David Montgomery is kind of now back to like who we thought he was. Now the snap share was significantly wider than I thought it would be, going into this past week. But he's going to be that touchdown dependent RB2, like who's likely to score a touchdown in more weeks than not. I don't want to overreact to his outlier game last week because Montgomery's not going to be breaking the type of runs that we saw. But if I'm desperate for a starting running back, as much as, I'm a Nico Collins stan, like I think I'm okay with this deal. Like Ibuka might not be a wide receiver 1, but I think he could be a very, very, very solid wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 2 rest of the season, like even with the target competition. So like if you need a running back, like I might be okay with this, man.
Romy definitely needs running backs. Right now he's waiting on 2 rookies to really explode, and even more than that. He has RJ Harvey and Trevion Henderson on his bench, along with like Braylon Allen, Tyler Algier, Blake Corum, Woody Marks. At wide receiver, he's pretty loaded. It's Malik Neighbors, T-Mac to go with Nico, and then he also has Jawan Jennings on his bench. I do want to mention that Ashton Genty is his other starting running back. So at some point, this dude took all the rookie running backs, which I appreciate. Just know that you have to be patient at some point for one of these guys to blast off. Faraz, we disagree on this one. I am on the Egbuka and Demont train more so than Nico. I actually think Nico and Emeka Egbuka really might score similarly the entire rest of the way. Emeka Egbuka is now the certified top wide receiver of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with an offense that to me still looks great. He was even on a snap decrease last week. That was not a lie. He is just so freaking good that he's making all these catches everywhere, all over the field, and very difficult ones on top of that. Meanwhile, this Nico Collins stuff, I thought he had an outside chance if Nick Caley came in and like totally revolutionized this Texans passing attack to like lead the NFL in, usage and be a wide receiver 1 and all this type of stuff. This stuff hasn't changed at all. The offensive line still sucks, still allowing pressure, and we're not really getting gimmies from Nico Collins. And last week he put on an awesome route to be wide open. That's not going to happen every single week for a long touchdown. I'm legit nervous about this Texans offense, and I'm not nervous about this Bucs offense, how it is right now. And I'm not nervous back after the Lions following their week 1 Packers tax. They are again back to running back 1, overall team 1 in terms of running back usage. And even if, Dave Montgomery gets 12 to 14 touches, he got his 12 last week. I don't expect him to, have a 70-yard touchdown run. But still, they're going to feed these running backs, and they're going to be projected for 26, 27, 28 points all over again this year. So I'm easily on the Egbuka and Demont side of this.
Yeah, it's, to your point about Nick Caley, like how do you, move into a Sean McVay style offense and like have less motion than last year? It's like, what are we doing here? So I agree with you, man. Like, let's get some more motion. Let's get these guys moving. Let's get some better, pre-snap stuff. And let's get some gimmies. I think, last week was a little bit more encouraging for Nico. And, CJ Stroud, obviously, I think he's a little bit of a problem also at times. I do think that the offensive environment is a bigger concern, though. I do think it can improve. I'm not overly worried about Nico Collins. I think he's going to be perfectly fine. And I still think he could be a solid wide receiver 1 rest of season. Because you're able to get that running back and you desperately need it. And it's a great situation to be in because if you take David Montgomery here, okay, now you have a starting running back every week. You have those other 2 rookies, all right, in Harvey and Henderson sitting there, increasing value, hopefully, as the season goes on. And now once one or both of them becomes very startable, now you have some ammo to potentially trade back and trade one of those running backs to go back and get that elite wide receiver in addition to Ibuka, or even use Ibuka if he doesn't end up being that elite receiver when, Chris Godwin is maybe somewhat back to himself, and then when Mike Evans is back as well. So I think you're setting yourself up nicely, for future trades as well.
And Romy, you had another rookie on top of it. And we can tell by your drafts, you love to select rookies. And by the way, we're not giving you a hard time, Romy. We just have fun with our friends, and you're one of our friends. People make fun of my dungeon background all the time. Stuff happens. All right. It's now the Jamar Chase and Brian Thomas Jr. portion of the show. Let's send it over to a guy who's making his second appearance on the show. This is Zufa.
All right, boys, I'm back and asking about Brian Thomas once again. I give up, boys, okay? I give up. I am throwing in the white towel. I want to get off this ride while I still can. I'm calling my mom to have her pick me up because I'm just no longer having fun. Like, it just feels like a Brian Thomas and Trevor Lawrence problem at this point, and I just don't want to deal with it. So I'm in a 14-man league, half PPR, and I'm set at wide receiver, but I'm still cooked at running back. I have CMC, but besides that, I have Bill, Woody Marks, and Kenny Gainwell. So the trade would be I give away Brian Thomas And in return, I get Quinshon Judkins. I know what you're probably going to say. You're probably going to say, no, hold on to Brian Thomas. It's not going to get worse than it is right now. And I agree with you, but I need an RB2, boys. And Judkins, he got the volume. He looked good, especially against the Packers defense. So I feel like I should take this trade, even though it still feels early to give up on BTJ, but let me know what you think I should do. Thanks for taking my question. And even if you won't say it back, Josh, I still love you.
You're all right, Zufa. Okay. Couple things here. He is panicking, and you want to know why. His roster is in dire straits because he drafted Drake London, Brian Thomas Jr., Devontae Smith, and CeeDee Lamb. So I guess my question to you, Faraz, is trading for the running back on the league's worst offense, is that going to fix the season?
No. I mean, this is the Nick Chubb role, right? And, we're going to see a lot of Jerome Ford this week. I mean, the Browns are like, 2 touchdown dogs like in this
16
game.
points.
Insane. So Judkins is going to be super game script dependent. And on the league's worst offense, like other teams are going to score. I understand that the Packers couldn't get it done last week, but that's not going to be the case every game where Judkins is just going to be able to rack up carries like he was. Listen, man, just stay in this situation. You got to stay pat with BTJ. Like I don't want to panic here. Like I just don't want to do it. So I'm going to stick with BTJ. Judkins is a game script, touchdown dependent guy. He's not going to be super involved in the receiving game. Jerome Ford's going to be very involved. So no, never. Can't do it.
Yeah, we have another Brian Thomas Jr. question in a second. I don't think for like a 14 team, like this team is terrible. It maybe has felt that through the first 3 weeks of the season. Let's also remind people that Zufa has Rashee Rice in his team, so it might get better as things go along here. I just think you're making moves to like try to make moves. My concern, and look, I can watch Quinshon Judkins, who I really liked as a prospect, and then his first 2 games in the NFL and say, this dude has talent, but it's not that simple. The last 16 non-Jameis Winston games for Oz, this is how many points the Cleveland Browns have posted. 14, 14, 10, 3, 6, 7, 14, 16, 13, 16, 15, 18, 17, 13, 17, 16. None of those start with a 2. None of those start with a 3. When you're thinking of Quinshon Judkins the rest of the season, you have to believe that the Cleveland Browns defense is going to be number 1 throughout the entire year. No matter what, if injuries happen, if they don't, because you have to have neutral game scripts in order for Quinshon Judkins or a 30-yard run against backups with 4 minutes to go in order for him to be an effective fantasy asset. So again, I think he's a solid one who on a average football team might be contending for top 12, top 15 running back status the rest of the way. But after what we just saw and after him being clearly the best runner on this team, everyone's still going to have him around like running back 20, because as you said, they are 16-point underdogs. And unless this Browns defense can magically force you into 3-point, 5-point, 7-point affair differences every single week, then he's just not going to be on a team that's going to give him a platform in order to be a huge fantasy asset, in my opinion, other than just a volume hog.
The Browns had some good defenses with Nick Chubb too. And we were so lucky that Nick Chubb was so damn good because he was able to take a crappy role on a crappy team and make something of it, right? Because he was so damn good. And that's what you have to depend on here. Like just a running back, just like you said, having to break those big runs. And is that going to happen as much? I don't know, right? So like, I don't want to depend on that.
Another BTJ question. This is from Vitor.
Hey, Faraz. Thank you for letting me speak to you today. My question is, should I trade Brian Thomas for Ricky Pearsall? He hasn't been producing. Shane Waldron is the wide receiver coach for the Jaguars, and we kind of saw like how many wide receivers tend to be better after Shane Waldron has left and when he was there. Should I make this trade? And my second question would be Nico Collins. Should I trade him at his peak right now for probably a Chris Olave and a Chuba Hubbard just to create some depth from the team that I have? Thank you.
All right, Victor, let's answer your question. First of all, I want to pair this again, what we just heard from Zufa. Brian Thomas Jr. is wide receiver 8 in usage this season, okay? I've seen in football and fantasy football circles this week that people are blaming Shane Waldron for this, when Shane Waldron is not the wide receivers coach, by the way. He's the passing game coordinator for the Jaguars, which means he operates underneath Liam Cohen and offensive coordinator Grant Udinski. This is not a deployment problem, a usage problem for BTJ right now. It is a hands problem. It is an individual effort and output problem from Brian Thomas Jr. I don't think that lasts for 17 weeks, and that could quickly change in week 4. So this is not a coaching thing. It's not even as much of a Trevor Lawrence thing. It's just Brian Thomas Jr. for getting his hands in the preseason. And so for that reason, Faraz, I believe he turns it around moving forward.
Listen, Shane Waldrus had a problem, or Shane Waldron. What was it? I forget. But anyway,
No, you just keep going. You nailed it.
It was a usage problem, like you said. JSN's usage in his rookie year was absolutely terrible. You can't say the same thing about Brian Thomas Jr. right now. Romo Dunze's situation and his usage in year 1 last year was terrible. But you can't say that about BTJ right now. So like that, I just did it too. I was making fun. Listen, man, I was making fun of him, and now I just can't even.
What about Chuba Hubbard? Anything you want to say about Chuba? Ferris wheel?
Chuba. Love me some Chuba. No, listen, man. So I don't think it's the same situation. I hear that, and I'm just like, well, Liam Cohen is the one who's like deploying this offense. Like, it's his design, it's his usage. So I don't see anything wrong with how they're deploying BTJ. I think it's fine. I don't even, like, to be honest, and this might be a hot take, but I think Trevor Lawrence is like okay. Like, he's not playing terribly. Now there are some ball placement concerns, there's no doubt, but I don't think it's absolutely terrible. I think it's more to do with BTJ himself than Trevor Lawrence at this point. And, I think moving forward, I think they're going to fix it. I think it's going to be okay. Like 3 weeks in, like this is a new offense. They installed a totally new offense, like completely different than what they had before. Same thing with Travis Hunter. Like, this is completely new, like, for everybody. So I think we should just kind of calm down and then move forward with BTJ. Keep starting him. Don't take him out of your lineup. Put him in your lineup this week. As far as Chuba Hubbard goes, like to be able to trade away Nico, and get what was it, Chuba and
Ricky Pearsall for Brian Thomas Jr.
Okay, gotcha. No, it was Nico for. He also wanted to trade away Nico, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So,
okay.
I'm personally keeping Nico there. I'm keeping Nico there, man. I'm not trading him for anybody in Chuba Hubbard. I'm not gonna do it.
Victor, you made us lose it a little bit with that question.
Sorry.
Okay, let's close things out with the question and answer portion with a Jamar Chase one from Matzer.
Hey Josh, hey Hayden, big fan of the show, but talk me off this cliff. What do we do with Jamar Chase? We were supposed to be able to set him and forget him. He's been my keeper for 3 years, but now it's being recommended that I start McMillan over him in some platforms. And while I love my Carolina Panthers and I love T-Mac, that just doesn't set right with me. So what do? Do I try and trade Chase now? Or do I hope that he survives this murderer's row of teams that's in front of him and trade him later? Or do I even trade him at all? How much panic should we have on Jamar Chase? Should we trade him for Rashee Rice? My brain is not handling this very well, if you couldn't tell. So, Josh, one charlatan to another, what do I do?
I think Matzer has a perfect frame of mind for all this. First, the next 3 games for the Cincinnati Bengals are the Broncos, Lions, and Packers. That's very difficult. And he has a loaded roster. I don't know if you're able to check this out. I'm sure we'll put it on the screen. It's James Cook, Jordan Mason, Jaden Daniels, Brock Bowers, Derrick Henry. At wide receiver, he has enough. Devontae Adams, T-Mac, Ricky Pearsall. We saw Matthew Golden's role expand last week, and that's only going to get better when he's not facing the Cleveland Browns defense. And he answered the question. I would absolutely look to sell Jamar Chase for Rashee Rice. I don't know if anyone else in the fantasy world other than me, you and me, might be saying that, because people are leaving the light on for Jamar Chase, but totally shutting the door for Chase Brown and T. Higgins. That line of logic doesn't make total sense to me. I just think this is going to be like a dead in the water pick here for Jamar Chase moving forward. And again, as soon as Rashee Rice gets back, his value is only going to go up and up and up. And he could help this team, again, not just make the playoffs, but get over the edge in week 16 and week 17.
I get the logic behind why people are so down on Chase Brown and why they might not be as down on Jamar Chase, because of the talent, like the talent, the delta is like ridiculous, right? But also the offensive line for Chase Brown is absolutely terrible, right? Like, that situation is so bad. But so I understand that. And so it's like, do I trade such an elite talent, right? You got someone like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, but they have quarterback issues. Like, what do I do, right? So I totally get that. If you can move them for, like, because there are some teams who might need someone like Jamar Chase, the promise of Jamar Chase, right? Someone who's 0-3, 1-2, but they have Rashee Rice. Oh my God. Like, what an amazing situation to be in, to be able to make that move potentially. I'm making that move all day long. And listen, I'm even, if I got to, I'll throw a little bit in extra on top of Jamar Chase to go get Rashee Rice. I'm not even joking. Like, I would do that. So I totally understand like where he's coming from, and I would try to make a move. But I think, things can get better. By the way, the Lions, I don't think it's as bad of a matchup because Terrion Arnold is just absolutely getting destroyed out there. But no, I'm with you, man. I'm moving Jamar Chase if I can, and I would not hold that much longer.
All right, we'll close this episode with our buys and then ourselves. Faraz, hit us with your buys this week.
Okay, all right. Well, he mentioned it, Ted McMillan, right? Like Ted McMillan to me, and also he just came up on the injury report this week with a little bit of a calf, but it seems like he's fine and he's going to play. But he, as a rookie, he is absolutely balling right now. And, I think this team's going to be in a bunch of potential negative game scripts. I thought they would be in one last week against the Falcons. That didn't work out so well. But 7th in the entire league in weighted opportunity per game, meaning in his target share and air yard share, it's an elite combination, as a rookie. And the only names ahead of him in weighted opportunity right now, JSN, Garrett Wilson, Puka, Neighbors, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson. Okay, literally all elite wide receivers. At least 8 targets in each of the last 3 games. 17.1 expected fantasy points last week. He only scored 7.8. So this is like a classic buy low situation for me, and I'm just going to be I already have so many trade offers out for Ted McMillan, and I don't know if people are necessarily considering him as one of those potentially like elite wide receivers just yet.
My buy this week is Ladd McConkey. He is deep down wide receiver production at this point. I just want to shout out our guys over on ESPN and the Fantasy Focus show. Love Field Yates, love Mike Clay. I actually don't know Daniel, but I'm sure I would love him at the same time. They were asked to rank the Chargers wide receivers for the rest of the season in terms of fantasy production. And they all put Ladd McConkey 3rd on that list. So to me, this presents us an opportunity to go out and get Ladd McConkey if people agree with this type of show, because I totally disagree. I understand it right now. Like Keenan Allen is wide receiver 6 in fantasy usage. QJ is wide receiver 10 in fantasy usage. Ladd McConkey is all the way down the list at wide receiver 35. But guess what? At any point that can change, because Ladd McConkey is still damn good at football. It's the environment right now that would allow for it to change on top of it, where the Chargers far and away, as we talked about last week, are number 1 in neutral pass rate. They are far and away number 1 in total wide receiver fantasy usage. Just through 3 weeks, that has gone to Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnson and hasn't gone to Ladd McConkey. So with how this Chargers offense has changed how they play football this year in a Greg Roman offense and just trusting Justin Herbert over and over and over again to throw the football, it isn't going to stay sticky with him being easily 3rd on this list. So Ladd to me is in a position on a team that's a very good offense in combination and in connection to a lot of the, underperforming assets that are being linked around him, to be in the one that by week 12, week 13, he could easily be at the top of this wide receiver trio in terms of opportunity. And that would make him literally a top 10 wide receiver in those weeks. So Ladd McConkey, because of this public perception about it right now, that he has been surpassed by Keenan Allen and QJ, that might be the case. At the same time, I think all 3 of these guys are going to be supported just based on the environment that the Chargers play offense in right now.
I think Ladd McConkey is 100% a buy, and I would totally disagree with the fact that he would be the wide receiver 3 rest of season. And if you like Ladd McConkey last year, this is a much better offensive environment that he was in last year when he completely broke out. Now he does have a little bit more target competition with Keenan Allen, but don't forget, like the target share was like kind of spread out last year also. And eventually at the end of the year, in those last 8 games, his target share ended up going crazy high. There's nothing wrong with Ladd McConkey right now. He's not hurt. He's going to be just fine. Sometimes you look at these underlying metrics and you're like, damn, like, I don't know if I can buy Ladd McConkey right now. He's only getting a 21% target share, same as these other guys. These other guys are getting higher. But I would say this is more of a bet on the talent situation. It's very similar to the Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings thing we were talking about earlier, except Ladd McConkey can be bought cheaper than Ricky Pearsall right now, which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, like it's a very different conversation to me of, well, Jerry Jeudy is not getting as much use as Cedric Tillman because that Browns offense just isn't one that I want to attack. Like, they're not going to be number one in wide receiver fantasy usage, number one in terms of just overall points that the Chargers are projected for. And Ladd can easily flip-flop this thing. Again, it might not happen in week 4, it might not happen in week 8, but as the season goes along, I said it last week, there is a platform for all 3 of these wide receivers to be fantasy viable every single week, and then they can chop and change the order of that. Okay, your sells this week, I'll quickly go through mine. Chuba Hubbard, I brought him up last week on the show as well. His 2 touchdowns have been in the receiving game. They've had to change up how they run the football because of the injuries to their offensive line. I just get a bit concerned that we're not going to get the same second half of the season that we got last year with this version of the Panthers. And then DeAndre Swift, like, this is someone who we are seeing get a ton of usage. He's the only back that's basically out there. He's just getting more banged up. He still is an inefficient runner. Yes, he has a couple explosives, if only one per game. But if he doesn't have that, then he's going to me, lose value on a team that can't have one of the lowest success rate rushing attacks for the entire season, or else Ben Johnson's going to actually lose his mind. So at some point, I think DeAndre Swift is going to face more competition than he is right now. And his big value right now is just totally owning this backfield.
Okay, I got a couple sells too. Number 1, Michael Pittman. He's a fantasy wide receiver one right now, but not in usage. Like, in usage, expected fantasy points per game, 9.7. But he's putting up 15.8 per game. He's a wide receiver 12. And, I look at the offense. You got Tyler Warren there. You got Josh Downs there. I think they could eat in terms of usage. Tyler Warren's actually leading them in target share at the moment. You saw Josh Downs lead them in target share in week 2. He's not really getting downfield targets right now either. So he's somebody that I'm looking to kind of take advantage of these few weeks of good performance. And then Jordan Mason, man, we talked about it earlier. This isn't only a situation for me if you're 3-0. If you're 3-0 and you have Jordan Mason, like, this might be a little bit of an opportunity to package him up and maybe target that desperate 0-3 team in your league for like a season-long difference maker, right? Like guys like Rashee Rice, guys like Bucky Irving, who's underperforming a little bit also on the type of opportunity he's given. Josh Jacobs, guys like that. I think, like we mentioned earlier, we talked about it at length already, so we don't need to go into it. But when Aaron Jones comes back, what is that workload going to look like? I think there's nothing wrong with keeping Mason, but wow, if you're 3-0, going attacking an 0-3 team, I think that could be a move worth pursuing.
We really disagree on some of those with Jordan Mason and even Michael Pittman. I think this Colts offense and how he's being utilized with like RPOs and filling out the zone areas is really, really nice. But we'll maybe continue that conversation next week. All right. That does it. Once again, another trade show underneath our belts and another time for you to go and check out Faraz's work over at Upper Hand Fantasy. Once again, thank you so much to everyone that sends in your video questions, putting yourself out there in front of this entire audience. It's very, very cool that we get so much feedback and traction and putting yourselves in the spotlight. Thank you again. We'll see you all next week.